All right. Welcome in, everyone. Kicking off another deep dive here. And today we're going to be tackling something that feels pretty huge right now. And that's all the stuff swirling around youth mental health. Concerns are rising. People are talking about it more. But what we want to do is get a little more focused, get past just the headlines. We've got a bunch of sources here really digging into why this is happening, what the reasons are that so many young people seem to be struggling, and then, really importantly, what are some things we can actually do about it?
Exactly. Because you hear it everywhere, but it's kind of hard to pin down. Like, what's actually going on? Why is this different now? And what are the possible ways forward, not just talking about the problem?
Yeah, totally. So our mission today is to give you, like a clear picture of the big factors involved and the potential solutions being talked about. Like, what can we actually do with all this information?
Yeah, I think that's key. It's easy to get overwhelmed when you're reading all these different articles, hearing different opinions. So, what we're trying to do is give you a solid framework to understand it all.
Right, exactly. Okay, so, I mean, you can't really ignore it anymore. Like, it seems like every day there's another article, another study, another news segment about anxiety, depression, stress, all hitting young people really hard. It just seems like something has shifted, right? So
Yeah.
I guess the big question we're trying to answer is why now? Like, what's different?
Right. And that's got to be the starting point. When you look back just a decade or so, it's undeniable that young people today face a completely different reality than previous generations. Just think about it. Social media is everywhere. Figuring out your career path feels way more uncertain. And even though everyone's connected digitally, loneliness seems to be a bigger issue. It's kind of wild.
It really is. And to put some numbers on that, one of the sources we looked at said over 60% of young adults have said they felt super stressed in the past year. That's a lot. It's not just a few people here and there. So, we got to ask, what are the actual mechanisms driving this? What are the big reasons behind all this mental health stuff hitting young people so hard?
Yeah, for sure. And it's not just one single thing, it's this whole web of interconnected issues. But we can kind of break it down into a few key areas. Like the first one that jumps out, especially today, is social media and how much we're all online, especially young people who, like, don't even know a world without it.
Right? It's almost like they're living their lives like publicly online in a way.
Yeah, exactly. And all this constant online presence, it kind of creates the perfect environment for what some experts call upward social comparison. Young people are constantly comparing themselves to like the best, most perfect versions of other people's lives they see online. And that can really mess with your perception of reality and make you feel inadequate, like you're not good enough.
It's like that endless scroll of everyone else's highlight reel, like everyone's on vacation, everyone's succeeding, everyone's happy, and it makes you feel like you're failing somehow, even as it's
Yeah.
totally not true. So that constant comparing, that's got to be fueling a lot of self-doubt and anxiety, right?
Definitely. And then you add another layer of pressure. The whole academic and career landscape, the expectations on young people to not only do well in school, but also find a good job, have a clear plan for the future. It all just seems so much more intense than it used to be.
Yeah, it feels like the bar keeps getting higher and higher. The job market is so competitive. There's all this pressure to get the right degree, the right internships, and then like land your dream job right out of college. It's a lot to handle.
It is, and it creates this feeling of being trapped in this cycle of expectations. It's not just about the schoolwork in the moment, it's the anxiety about what if I don't get that job? What if my future doesn't look like what everyone expects it to?
Yeah, I can see that. And it's not just the pressure coming from outside, right? Like there's also all this stuff about family and societal expectations that can really weigh on young people's minds.
Oh, absolutely. Cultural norms and family values, I mean, they usually come from a good place, right? People wanting the best for you. But sometimes it can feel like way too much, like the pressure to succeed in a certain way, get married by a certain age, follow a specific career path, even if it's not what you actually want, that can create so much internal conflict and stress.
It's that classic battle between who you really are and who you think you're supposed to be, you know, and trying to figure that out, especially when you're young and still finding your way. That's tough.
It really is. And here's the thing, it's kind of ironic, but in this age where everyone's connected digitally, we're actually seeing a rise in loneliness and isolation among young people.
Yeah, that's wild, right? You can have like thousands of online friends and still feel completely alone.
Right. And I think what's important to remember is that there's a big difference between those surface level connections online and the deeper, more meaningful relationships that actually make us feel supported and connected. When you don't have that real human connection, that feeling of being seen and understood, it can lead to isolation, and we know that's a big risk factor for depression.
It makes sense. Scrolling through social media is not the same as having a real conversation with a friend or feeling like you belong somewhere. And, we got to talk about the whole issue of awareness and the stigma around mental health. Like, that's still a big problem.
Huge problem. The idea that mental health issues are like a sign of weakness, something you should just snap out of, it's totally outdated, but it's still preventing a lot of young people from getting the help they need. There's this fear of being judged, labeled, not taken seriously.
And that silence, that not wanting to reach out, it can make things so much worse. Like with any health issue, the earlier you address it, the better. Ignoring mental health problems won't make them go away. They usually just get bigger and harder to deal with.
Exactly. Okay, so we've talked about some of the challenges. Now, what can we actually do about it? Like, what are some solutions, some practical steps that young people and the adults in their lives can take to help?
Yeah, let's get into that. Like, what can we actually do? One of the things that came up a lot in the research is just the power of talking about it. Like actually opening up about what you're going through.
Totally. Talking about it is not weak. It's actually a sign of strength. Whether it's a trusted friend, a family member, a therapist, sharing your experience with someone you feel comfortable with can be incredibly helpful. Like just getting it out of your head and into words can help you process things, see things more clearly, and maybe even feel a little lighter.
Right, like letting some of that pressure out.
Yeah.
And speaking of things we can do, going back to the social media thing, there's a lot of talk about the importance of limiting your time online,
Yeah.
like being more intentional about how you use it.
Yeah, that's a huge one. Reducing screen time, being aware of those comparison traps, taking breaks from social media, it can make a big difference. It's about prioritizing your real life, your real interactions, over the often fake, filtered world online.
Right, it's about being present in your own life instead of constantly watching everyone else's. And then, there are things you can do internally, like practices like mindfulness and meditation that can be super helpful.
And what's great is that these practices are becoming more and more accessible. Even just doing some simple breathing exercises, listening to a guided meditation, or journaling, those things can really calm your mind and help you manage stress. It's all about learning to be present in the moment, not getting caught up in worries about the past or future.
Like a reset button for your brain. And then, of course, we can't forget about the basic stuff, like taking care of your physical health, because that's so connected to mental health.
Yeah, totally. Our mind and body are totally linked. When you exercise regularly, get enough sleep, eat healthy food, it all has a huge impact on your mental state. It's funny how we often forget that those basic things are just as important for our mental health as they are for our physical health.
Totally true. Sometimes the simplest things are the most powerful. Even going for a walk for like 30 minutes can really lower your stress levels. And, we got to say it loud and clear. Getting professional help is not just okay, it's often the best thing you can do.
Absolutely. Therapy and counseling are not just for people in crisis. They're for anyone who wants help navigating their emotions, developing healthy coping skills, and getting to know themselves better. Think of it like having a guide to help you through the tough stuff in life.
It's about learning how to take care of your mental health in the long run. And last but not least, having a strong support system, people you can rely on. That's so important.
It's amazing how much resilience you can build when you have people around you who are positive, supportive, and understanding. Knowing you're not alone, that there are people who care about you and want to help, it makes a huge difference, especially when things get tough.
It's that feeling of belonging, of being connected. Okay, so we've covered a lot today. We talked about why youth mental health is such a big deal, the main factors driving it, and some real practical things we can do to make things better.
And at the end of the day, the most important message is that your mental health matters. It's not something to ignore or be ashamed of. It's a fundamental part of your well-being.
Absolutely. And if you're struggling with any of this stuff, please know that you're not alone. So many young people are going through similar challenges, feeling similar pressures.
And there is help available. Don't be afraid to take those first steps towards taking care of yourself, whether it's talking to someone you trust, setting boundaries with social media, trying out mindfulness, or reaching out to a professional.
Here's something to think about as we wrap up. Out of all the stuff we discussed today, what really stood out to you? Like what resonated with your own experiences or what you're seeing in the people around you? Think about those social media pressures, the career anxieties, the family and societal expectations, the loneliness, the stigma. And then ask yourself, what's one small thing you can do this week, even just one small action, to address that either for yourself or for someone you care about. Thanks for diving in with us.